Hi, everybody. This is Jimmy, and you're reading with Jimmy. We're reading Fyodor Dostoevsky's Notes from Underground. It's a novel. We're on part 6 of 8 parts of reading, which is translated by Constance Garnett. You can email me anytime, jimmy@readingwithjimmy.com, jimmy@readingwithjimmy.com. This is probably the most intense, confusing chapters that we're going to read this part reading. The book is definitely strange. Would you agree with me? But if you're sticking it out with me, you're learning something, not only about people, but about yourself. And remember, that's why we read, isn't it? To learn about how others live and how we should live, or in this case, how we should not live. You ready? You recall he was just acting like a jerk with his buddies, and he followed them to a prostitution house, and he has just been with Lisa. Right before this starts, he asks her, "Have you always lived in Petersburg?" I asked a minute later, almost angrily. They were just laying there looking at each other, turning my head slightly toward her. Ready? Here we go. "No," she said. "Where do you come from?" "From Riga," she answered reluctantly. "Are you German?" "No, Russian." "Have you been here long?" "Where?" "In this house." Remember, it's a house of prostitution. "A fortnight," so it's not a long time. She spoke more and more jerkily. The candle went out. I could no longer distinguish her face. "Have you a father and a mother?" "Yes, no, I have." "Where are they?" "They're in Riga," she says. "What are they?" "Oh, nothing." "Nothing? What class are they?" "They're tradespeople," Lisa says. "Have you always lived with them?" "Yes." "How old are you?" 20, she says. "Why did you leave them?" "Oh, for no reason." That answer meant, quote, "Let me alone. I feel sick and sad." So we were silent. God knows why I did not go away. Remember, this is a diary narration. He's writing to himself. He has imaginary gentlemen that he talks to sometimes, so he's really talking to himself, and we're kind of eavesdropping on his thoughts. So he says, God knows why I didn't go away. I felt myself more and more sick and dreary. The images of the previous day began of themselves, apart from my will, flittering through my memory in confusion. I suddenly recalled something that I had seen that morning when, full of anxious thoughts, I was hurrying to the office. Quote, "I saw them carrying a coffin out yesterday, and they nearly dropped it," I suddenly said aloud. Not that I desired to open up the conversation, but it was an accident. "A coffin," she said. "Yes, in the Haymarket. They were bringing it up out of the cellar." "From a cellar?" she asks. "Not from a cellar, but from a basement. Oh, you know, down below. From a house of ill fame. It was filthy all around. Eggshells, litter, a stench. It was loathsome." Silence. "A nasty day to be buried," I began, simply to avoid being silent. "Nasty in what way?" she asked. "Well, the snow, the wet." I yawned. "It makes no difference," she said suddenly after a brief silence. "No, it's horrid." I yawned again. The gravediggers must have sworn at getting drenched by the snow, and there must have been water in the grave. "Why was there water in the grave?" she asked, with a sort of curiosity, but speaking even more harshly and abruptly than before. I suddenly began to feel provoked. "Why, there must have been water at the bottom a foot deep. You can't dig a dry grave in Vokolov Cemetery." "Why?" she said. "Why? Why, the place is waterlogged. It's a regular marsh, so they bury them in water. I've seen it myself many times. Parentheses. I had never seen it once. Indeed, I had never been in Vokolov and had only heard stories of it. So why, the question here that Jimmy asks for you to consider is, why is he lying? Do you mean to say you don't mind how you die? But why should I die? She answered as though defending herself. Well, someday you'll die. You will die just the same as that dead woman. She was a girl like you. She died of consumption. A wench would have died in the hospital. She knows all about it already. She said wench, not girl. Well, you know what a wench is, right? A prostitute. She was in debt to her madam, I retorted, more and more provoked by the discussion. So here you have to ask, how does he know this? Does he know this? What's he doing? And went on earning money for her up until the end, though she was in consumption. Consumption is a horrible disease, ladies and gentlemen. Some sledge drivers standing by were talking about her to some soldiers and telling them so. No doubt they knew her. They were laughing. They were going to meet in the pothouse to drink to her memory. A great deal of this was my invention. A great deal of this was my invention. Got it? So he's making this stuff up. Why is he doing that? Silence followed, profound silence. She didn't stir. And is it better to die in a hospital? Isn't it just the same? Besides, why should I die? She added irritably. Well, if not now, a little later, I said. Why a little later? Oh, why indeed? Now you are young, pretty, fresh, and you will fetch a high price. But after another year of this life, you will be very different. You will go off in a year? Anyway, in a year, you will be worth less, I continued malignantly. Malignantly, in a way that shows a strong wish to do harm. You see what this guy's doing? He's torturing her, isn't he? And he talks about his servant being the torturer of him. You will go from here to something lower, another house, and a year later to a third, lower and lower, and in 7 years you're going to come to the basement in the Haymarket. That must be a slum in Russia, right? That will be if you were lucky, but it would be much worse if you got some disease, consumption, say, or you caught a chill or something or other. It's not easy to get over an illness in your way of life. And if you catch anything, you might not get rid of it. And so you would die. Oh, well, then I shall die, she answered quite vindictively. And she made a quick movement. Narrator, but one is sorry. Sorry for who? I put little notes here so you can follow the dialogue. Sorry for life, the narrator says. Silence. Have you been engaged to be married, huh? What's that to you? Oh, I'm not cross-examining you. It's nothing to me. Why are you so cross? Of course, you may have had your own troubles. Well, what's it to me? I simply felt sorry. Sorry for whom? Sorry for you. No need, she whispered, hardly audibly, and again made a faint movement. That incensed me at once. What? I was so gentle with her, and she? Why do you think that you are on the right path? I don't think anything. That's what's wrong, that you don't think. You realize it while there is still time. There is still time. You are still young, good looking. You might love, be married, be happy. Not all married women are happy, she snapped out of the rude, abrupt tone that she had first used. Not at all. Not all, of course. But anyway, it is much better than the life here. Infinitely better. Besides, With love, one can live even without happiness. Is that true? Even in sorrow, life is sweet. Life is sweet, however one lives. But here, what is there but foulness? Phew! I turned away with disgust. I was no longer reasoning coldly. I began to feel myself what I was saying and warm to the subject. I was already longing to expound the cherished ideas. I had brooded over in my corner. Something suddenly flared up in me, and an object had appeared before me. Well, never mind my being here. I am not an example for you. I'm perhaps worse than you are. I was drunk when I came here, though, I hastened, however, to say in self-defense. Besides, a man is no example for a woman. It's a different thing. I may degrade and defile myself, but I am not anyone's slave. I come and I go, and that's an end of it. I shake it off, and I'm a different man. But you are a slave from the start. Yes, a slave. You give up everything, your whole freedom. If you want to break your chains afterwards, you won't be able to. You will be more and more fast in the snares. It is an accursed bondage. I know it. I won't speak of anything else. Maybe you won't understand, but tell me, no doubt, you are in debt to your madam? There, you see, I added, though she made no answer, but only listened in silence, entirely absorbed. That's a bondage for you. You'll never buy your freedom. They will see to it. It's like selling your soul to the devil. And besides, perhaps I, too, am just as unlucky. How do you know? And wallow in the mud on purpose, out of misery. You know, men take to drink from grief. Well, maybe I'm here from grief. Come, tell me, what is there good here? Here you and I came together just now and did not say one word to one another all the time. And it was only afterward you began staring at me like a wild creature and I at you. Is that loving? Is that how one human being should meet another? It's hideous. That's what it is. Yes, she assented sharply and hurriedly. I was positively astounded by the promptitude of this yes. So the same thought may have been straying through her mind when she was staring at me just before. So she too was capable of certain thoughts. Damn it all. This was interesting. This was a point of likeness. I thought almost of rubbing my hands. And indeed, it's easy to turn a young soul like that. It was an exercise of my power that attracted me most. I made a note here. When you see these little red arrows, pay attention. It was the exercise of his power that attracted. What's he talking about? She turned her head nearer to me, and it seemed to me that in the darkness, remember they can't see each other, that she propped herself on her arm. Perhaps she was scrutinizing me. How I regretted that I could not see her eyes. I heard her deep breathing. Why have you come here? I asked her with a note of authority already in my voice. Oh, I don't know. But how nice it would be to be living in your father's house. It's warm and free. You have a home all your own. But what if it's worse than this, she asked. I must take the right tone flashed through my mind. I may not get far with sentimentality. But it was only a momentary thought. I swear she really did interest me. Besides, I was exhausted and moody. And cunning so easily goes hand in hand with feeling. 1 second, ladies and gentlemen. And cunningly so easily hand in hand with feeling. Who denies it? I hasten to answer. Anything may happen. I'm convinced that someone has wronged you and that you are more sinned against than sinning. Of course, I know nothing of your story. But it's not likely a girl like you has come here of her own inclination. A girl like me, she whispered, hardly audibly, but I heard it. Damn it all. I was flattering her. That's horrid. But maybe it was a good thing. She was silent. See, Lisa, I will tell you about myself. If I had had a home from childhood, I shouldn't be what I am now. I often think that. However bad it may be at home, anyway, they are your father and your mother, and not your enemies and strangers, and once a year at least they'll show that they love you. Anyway, you know that you are at home. I will tell you about you. I will tell you about myself. Once a year, they will show you love. Anyway, you know that you will be home. I grew up without a home, and perhaps that's why I turned out so unfeeling. I waited again. Maybe she doesn't understand, I thought. And indeed, it's absurd. It's moralizing. If I were a father and I had a daughter, I believe I should love my daughter more than my sons, really. I began indirectly, as though talking of something else to distract her attention. I must confess, I blushed. Why so? She asked. Ah, so she was listening. I don't know, Lisa. I knew a father who was a stern, austere man, but he used to go down on his knees to his daughter. He used to kiss her hands, her feet. He couldn't make enough of her, really. And when she danced at parties, he used to stand for 5 hours at a stretch gazing at her. He was mad over her. I understand that. She would fall asleep tired at night, and he would wake to kiss her in her sleep and make the sign of the cross over her. He would go about in a dirty old coat. He was stingy to everyone else, but he'd spend his last penny for her, giving her expensive presents. And it was the greatest delight when she was pleased with what he gave her. You know, fathers always love their daughters more than the mothers do. Some girls live happily at home and believe I should never let my daughters marry. What next? She said with a faint smile. Well, I should be jealous, I really should, to think that she would kiss anyone else. That she should love a stranger more than her father. It was painful to imagine that. Of course, that's all nonsense. Of course, every father would be reasonable at last, but I believe, before I should let her marry, I should worry myself to death. I should find fault with all her suitors, but I should end up by letting her marry whom she herself loved. The one whom the daughter loves always seems to be the worst to the father, you know. That's always so. So many families' troubles come from that. Some are glad to sell their daughters rather than marrying them honorably, she said. Ah, so that was it. Such a thing, what thing, selling their daughters, Lisa, happens in those accursed families in which there's neither love nor God, I retorted warmly. And where there is no love, there is no sense either. There are such families, it's true, but I am not speaking of them. You must have seen wickedness in your family if you talk like that. Truly, you must have been very unlucky. That sort of thing mostly comes about through poverty. And is it any better with the gentry? Even among the poor, honest people live happily. Yes, perhaps. You know, another thing, Lisa. Man is fond of reckoning up his troubles, but he does not count his joys. If he counted them up, as he should, he would see that every lot has enough happiness provided for it. And what if all goes well with the family, if the blessings of God is upon it? If the husband is a good husband and loves you and cherishes you and never leaves you, there is happiness in such a family. Even sometimes, there is happiness in the midst of a sorrow. Indeed, sorrow is everywhere. If you marry, you will find out for yourself. But think of the first years of married life with the one you love. What happiness there sometimes is in it. And indeed, it's the ordinary thing. In those early days, even quarrels with one's husbands ends happily, huh? Some women get up quarrels with their husbands just because they love them. Indeed, I knew a woman like that. She seemed to say that because she loved him, she would torment him and make him feel it. You know that you may torment a man on purpose through love. What and why is he saying what he says? I want you to think about this. Right? Where's he getting this information? Women are particularly given to that. What's that? Torturing a man through love. Thinking to themselves, I will love him so, I will make him so much of him afterwards that it's no sin to torment him a little now. And all in the house rejoice in the sight of you. And you are happy and gay and peaceful and honorable. And then there are some women who are jealous. And if he went off anywhere, I knew one such woman, she couldn't restrain herself, but would jump up at night and run off on the slide to find out where he was and whether he was with some other woman. You know, that's a pity. And the woman knows herself it's wrong, and her heart fails her, and she suffers, but she loves. It's all through love. And how sweet it is to make it up after quarrels, to own herself in the wrong, or to forgive him. And they are both happy all at once, as though they had met anew and had been married over again, as though their love had begun afresh. And no one should know what passes between a husband and wife if they love one another. No one. And whatever quarrels there may be between them, they ought not to call in their own mother to judge between them and tell tales of one another. They are their own judges. You know, love is a holy mystery and ought to be hidden from all other eyes. Whatever happens, that makes it, love, holier and better. They respect one another more, and much is built on respect. And if once there has been love, if they have been married for love, why should love pass away? Surely one can keep it. It is rare that one cannot keep love. And if the husband is kind and straightforward, why should not love last? The first phase of married life will pass. That's true. And then there will come a love that's still better. Then there will be the union of souls, and they will have everything in common, and there will be no secrets between them. And once they have children, the most difficult times will seem to them happy, so long as there is love and courage. Even toil will be a joy. You may deny yourself bread for your children. Even that will be a joy. They will love you for it afterwards, so you are laying for your own future. And as the children grow, you feel that you are an example, a support for them. Even after you die, your children will always keep your thoughts and feelings because they have received them from you. And they will take on your semblance and likeness. So you see, this is a great duty. How can it fail to draw the father and the mother nearer? People say it's a trial to have children. Who says that? It's heavenly happiness. Are you fond of little children, Lisa? I'm awfully fond of them. You know, a little rosy baby boy at your bosom, and what husband's heart is not touched, seeing his wife nursing his child, a plump little rosy baby, sprawling and snuggling, chubby little hands and feet, clean, tiny little nails, so tiny that it makes you laugh to look at them. Eyes that look as if they understand everything. And while it sucks, it clutches at your bosom with its little hands and plays. And when its father comes up, the child tears away from the bosom, flings itself back, and looks at his father and laughs as though it were fearfully funny and falls to sucking again. Or it will bite its mother's breast when its little teeth are coming. And when it looks sideways at her with its little eyes as though to say, look, I'm biting. Is not that all happiness? When they are three together, the husband, the wife, and the child? One can forgive a great deal for the sake of such moments. Yes, Lisa, one must first learn to live oneself before you blame others. I wrote poetry here. It's somewhat poetic, but what the heck is he talking about? It's by pictures that one must get at you, I thought to myself, and that I did speak with real feeling. You see what he's doing? He's painting a picture with words. And all at once I flushed crimson. What if she were suddenly to burst out laughing? What would I do then? That idea drove me to fury. Toward the end of my speech, I really was excited, and now my vanity was somehow wounded. The silence continued. I almost nudged her. Why are you? She began and stopped, but I understood. There was a quiver of something different in her voice, not abrupt, not harsh and unyielding like before, but something soft, shamefaced, so shamefaced that I suddenly felt ashamed and guilty. What? I asked with tender curiosity. Why? What? Why do you speak somehow like a book? She said. And again there was a note of irony in her voice. That remark sent a pang to my heart. Oh, it was not what I was expecting. I did not understand that she was hiding her feelings under irony, and that this is usually the last refuge of modest and chaste-souled people, when the privacy of their soul is coarsely, intrusively invaded, and that their pride makes them refuse to surrender till the last moment and shrink from giving expression to their feelings before you. This is an insight, ladies and gentlemen. I ought to have guessed the truth from the timidity with which she had repeatedly approached her sarcasm. People hide behind sarcasm, only bringing herself to utter it at last with an effort. But I didn't guess, and an evil feeling took possession of me. Wait a bit, I thought. So he's giving this in his this rousing speech, a beautiful painting a picture of a family of love and babies, right? And she says, "Why do you somehow speak like a book?" Bang, right? But she doesn't say it with there's a little note of irony, and that bang is heart, pangs his heart, bangs his heart. She was hiding her feelings under irony. Is that true? Chapter 7. Oh, hush, Lisa. How can you talk about being like a book when it makes me even an outsider feel sick? Though I don't look at it as an outsider, for indeed it touches me to the heart. Is it possible? Is it possible that you do not feel sick at being here yourself? Evidently, habit does wonders, doesn't it? God knows what habit can do with anyone. Can you seriously think that you will never grow old? That you will always be good looking? And that you will keep you here forever and ever? That they will keep you here? I say nothing of the lonesomeness of the life here. So let me tell you this about it. Well, what's it? The lonesomeness of the life here. About your present life, I mean. Here, though, you are young now. You're attractive, you're nice, with soul and feeling. Yet you know, as soon as I came to myself just now, I felt at once sick at being here with you. One can only come here when one is drunk. But if you were anywhere else, living as good people live, I should perhaps be more than attracted to you. By you. should fall in love with you, should be glad of a look from you, let alone a word. I should hang about your door, should go down on my knees to you, should look at you as my betrothed, and think it is an honor to be allowed to. And I should not dare to have an impure thought about you. But here, you see, I know that I have only to whistle, and you have to come to me whether you like it or not. I don't consult your wishes, but you mine. The lowest laborer hires himself as a workman, but he doesn't make a slave of himself altogether. Besides, he knows that he will be free again presently. But when are you free? Only think of what you are giving up here. What is it that you are making a slave of? Is it your soul together with your body? You're selling your soul, which you have no right to dispose of. You give your love to be outraged by every drunkard, love. But that's everything, It's priceless diamond. It's a maiden's treasure, love. Why, a man would be ready to give his soul to face death to gain that love. But how much is your love worth now, huh? You're all sold, all of you, body, soul. There's no need to strive for love when you can have everything without love. And there's no greater insult to a girl than that. Do you understand? To be sure, I have heard that they comfort you, poor fools, that they let you have lovers of your own here. But that's simply a farce. That's a sham. It's just laughing at you, and you're taken in by it. Why do you suppose that he really loves you, that lover of yours? I don't believe it. How can he love you when he knows that you may be called away from him any minute? And he would be a low fellow if he did. Will he have a grain of respect for you? What have you in common with him? He laughs at you and he robs you. That is all his love amounts to. You are lucky if he doesn't beat you. Very likely he does beat you. Ask him, if you have got one, whether he will marry you. He's going to laugh in your face. And if he doesn't, spit in it or give you a blow, though maybe he's not even worth a half a penny himself. And for what have you ruined your life? If you come to think of it, for the coffee that they give you to drink and the plentiful meals, with what object are they feeding you up to? An honest girl couldn't swallow the food, for she would know what she was being fed for. You are in debt here, and of course you will always be in debt, and you will go on in debt to the end, till the visitors here begin to scorn you, and that will be soon happening. Don't rely upon your youth. All that flies by express train here, You will be kicked out, and not simply kicked out. Long before that, she will begin nagging at you and scolding you, abusing you, as though you hadn't sacrificed your health for her, had not thrown away your youth for her, your soul for her benefit, but as though you had ruined her, beggared her, robbed her. Her is the madam of the house. And don't expect anyone to take your part. The others, your companions, will attack you too, and to win her favor. For all are in slavery here, and have lost conscience and pity here long ago. They have become utterly vile, and nothing on earth is more vile or more loathsome and more insulting than their abuse. And you are laying down everything here unconditionally, your youth, health, beauty, hope. And at 22, you will look like a woman of 55 and 30. And you'll be lucky if you are not diseased. Pray to God for that. No doubt they are thinking now that you have a gay time and no work to do, and yet there is no work harder or more dreadful in the world or ever has been than what you do. One would think that at the heart alone would be worn out with tears. And you won't dare to say a word, not half a word, when they drive you from here. You will go away as though you were to blame. And you will change to another house, and then to a third house, and then somewhere else until you come down at last to the Haymarket. the slums. There you will be beaten at every turn. That and good manners. The visitors don't know how to be friendly without beating you, you know. You don't believe that it is hateful there? Go. Look for yourself sometime. You're going to see with your own eyes. Once, one New Year's Day, I saw a woman at a door. They had turned her out as a joke to give her a taste of the frost because she had been crying so much. And then they shut the door behind her. At 9 o'clock in the morning, she was already quite drunk, disheveled, half-naked, covered with bruises. Her face was powdered, but she had a black eye. Blood was trickling from her nose and her teeth, and some cabman had just given her a drubbing. She was sitting on the stone steps. A saltfish of some sort was in her hand, and she was crying, wailing something about her luck, and beating with the fish on the steps. And the cabman and the drunken soldiers were crowding in the doorway, taunting her. You don't believe that you will ever be like that? I should be sorry to believe it too, but how do you know? Maybe 10 years, 8 years ago, that very woman with the saltfish came here as a cherub, innocent, pure, knowing no evil, blushing at every word. Perhaps she was like you, proud, ready to take offense, and not like the others. Perhaps she looked like a queen and knew what happiness was in store for the man who should love her and whom she should love. Do you see how it ended? And what if at that very minute, when she was beating on the filthy steps with that fish, drunken and disheveled, what if at that very minute she recalled the pure early days of her father's house, when she used to go to school, and the neighbor's son who watched for her on the way, declaring that he would love her as long as he lived, and he would devote his life to her, and when they vowed to love one another forever, that they would be married as soon as they were grown up. No, Lisa. It would be happy for you if you were to die soon of consumption, in some corner, in some cellar, like the woman just now. In the hospital, do you say? Well, if you would be lucky if they take you. But what if you are still of use to the Manomir? You know, consumption is a queer disease. It's not like fever. Consumption is defined here on the bottom. It's an old name for tuberculosis, bacterial infection that affects the lungs. It's a disease named of significant weight loss, consumption. The patient goes on hoping till the last minute and says he's okay. He deludes himself. And that just suits your madam. Don't doubt it. That's how it is. You have sold your soul. And what is more, you owe money. So you daren't say a word. But when you are dying, all will abandon you, and all will turn away from you, and then there will be nothing to get from you. What's more, they're going to reproach you for cumbering the place, for being so long over dying. Why can't you just die? However, you beg, and you won't get a drink of water without abuse. Whenever you are going off, you nasty hussy, you won't let us sleep with your moaning and your groaning, and you make the gentleman sick. That's true. I've heard such things said myself, and they will thrust you dying into the filthiest corner in the cellar and in the damp and the darkness. What will your thoughts be lying there alone? And when you die, strange hands will lay you out with grumbling and impatience, and no one will bless you, and no one will sigh for you. They only want to get rid of you as soon as they can. They will buy a coffin, take you to the grave as they did some poor old woman today, and celebrate your memory at the tavern. In the grave, sleet, filth, wet snow. No need to put themselves out for you. Let her down, Bono, and just to her luck, even here, she is head foremost, the hussy. Shorten the cord, you rascal. Ah, it's okay as it is. All right, is it? Why, she's laying on her side. She was a fellow creature. Come on, let's treat her with respect. But never mind, throw the earth on her. And they won't care to waste much time quarreling over you. They'll scatter the wet blue clay as quick as they can and go off to the tavern, and there your memory on earth will end. Other women have children. They go to their graves, their fathers, husbands, while you, for you, neither tear nor sigh nor remembrance. No one in the whole world will ever come to you. Your name will vanish from the face of the earth, as though it had never existed and never been born at all. Nothing but filth and mud. However you knock at your coffin lid at night, and when the dead arise, however you cry, "Let me out, kind people, to live in the light of day. My life was no life at all. My life had been thrown away like a dishcloth. It was drunk away in the tavern at the Haymarket. Let me out, kind people, to live in the world again." And I worked myself up to such a pitch that I began to have a lump in my throat myself. This guy's unbelievable. And all at once, I stopped. I sat up in dismay and, bending over apprehensively, began to listen with a beating heart. I had reason to be troubled. I had felt for some time that I was turning her soul upside down and rending her heart. And the more I was convinced of it, and the more eagerly I desired to gain my object as quickly and as effectually as possible. It was the exercise of my skill that carried me away. And yet, it was not merely sport. I knew I was speaking stiffly, artificially, even bookishly, in fact. I could not speak except like a book. But that did not trouble me. I felt that I should be understood, and that this very bookishness might be an assistance. But now, having attained my effect, I was suddenly panic-stricken. Never before had I witnessed such despair. She was lying on her face, thrusting her face into the pillow and clutching it in both hands. Her heart was being torn. Her youthful body was shuddering all over, as though in convulsions. This is what he did to this young lady. Suppressed sobs rent her bosom, and suddenly burst out weeping and wailing. And then she pressed closer into the pillow. She didn't want anyone here, not a living soul, to know of her anguish and her tears. She bit the pillow. She bit her hand until it bled. I saw that afterwards. Or thrusting her fingers into her disheveled hair, seemed rigid with effort of restraint, holding her breath and clenching her teeth. I began saying something, begging her to calm herself, but I felt I didn't dare. And all at once, in a sort of cold shiver, almost in terror, she began fumbling in the dark, trying hurriedly to get dressed to go. And it was dark. Though I tried my best, I couldn't finish dressing quickly. Suddenly, I felt a box of matches and a candlestick with a whole candle in it. As soon as the room lit up, Lisa sprang up, sat up in the bed, and with a contorted face, with a half-insane smile, she looked at me almost senselessly. I sat down beside her and took her hands. She came to herself, made an impulsive movement toward me, and would have caught hold of me, but didn't dare, and slowly bowed her head before me. So he was getting dressed, not her. Pardon me for that. "Lisa, my dear, I was wrong. Forgive me, my dear," I began, but she squeezed my hand in her fingers so tightly that I felt I was saying the wrong thing, so I stopped. "This is my address, Lisa. Come to me." "I will come," she answered resolutely, her head still bowed. "But now I am going. Goodbye, until we meet again." I got up. She too stood up and suddenly flushed all over, gave a shudder, snatched up a shawl that was lying on the chair, muffled herself in it to her chin. As she did this, she gave another sickly smile, blushed, and looked at me strangely. I felt wretched. I was in haste to get away, to disappear. "Wait a minute," she said suddenly. in the passage just at the doorway, stopping me with her hand on my overcoat. She put down the candle in hot haste and ran off. Evidently, she had thought of something or wanted to show me something. As she ran away, she flushed, her eyes shone, and there was a smile on her lips. What was the meaning of that? Against my will, I waited. She came back a minute later with an expression that seemed to ask forgiveness for something. In fact, it was not the same face, nor the same look as the evening before, sullen, mistrustful, and obstinate. That was before. Her eyes now were imploring. They were soft, and at the same time, trustful, caressing, timid. The expression with which children look at people they are very fond of whom they are asking a favor. Her eyes were a light hazel, and they were lovely eyes. They were full of life and capable of expressing love as well as sullen hatred, and making no explanation, as though I, as a sort of higher being, must understand everything without explanations. She held a piece of paper to me. Her whole face was positively beaming at that instant with naive, almost childish triumph. I unfolded it, and it was a letter to her from a medical student or someone of that sort. A very high-flown, flowery letter, but extremely respectful love letter. I don't recall the words now, but I remember well that though through the high-flown phrases there was an apparent genuine feeling which can't be feigned. Can't fake it. When I had finished reading the letter, I met her glowing, questioning, and childish, impatient eyes fixed upon me. She fastened her eyes upon my face, and she waited impatiently for what I should say. And in a few words, hurriedly, but with a sort of joy and pride, she explained to me that she had been to a dance somewhere in a private house, a family of, quote, very nice people who knew nothing, absolutely nothing, for she had only come here so lately, and it had all happened, and she hadn't made up her mind to stay, and was certainly going away as soon as she had paid her debt. And at that party, there had been this student who had danced with her all evening. He had talked to her, and it turned out that he had known her in the old days at Riga, when he was a child, and that they had played together. But it was a very long time ago, and he knew her parents. But about this, or being a prostitute, he knew nothing whatever, and had no suspicion. And the day after the dance, 3 days ago, he had sent her this letter through a friend with whom she had gone to the party. Well, that was all. She dropped her shining eyes with a sort of bashfulness as she finished. The poor girl was keeping that student's letter as a precious treasure, and she had run to fetch it, her only treasure, because she did not want me to go away without knowing that she, too, was honestly and genuinely loved, and that she, too, was addressed respectfully. No doubt that letter was destined to lie in her box and lead to nothing. But nonetheless, I am certain that she would keep it all her life as a precious treasure, as her pride and justification. And now at the last minute she had thought of that letter and brought it with a naive pride to raise herself in my eyes, that I might see that I too might think well of her. But I said nothing. I pressed her hand and went out. I so longed to get away. I walked all the way home in spite of the fact that the melting snow was still falling in heavy flakes. I was exhausted, shattered in bewilderment. But behind the bewilderment, the truth was already gleaming. The lonesome truth. What is the truth? What truth is he talking about? Chapter 8. It was some time, however, before I consented to recognize that truth. Waking up in the morning after some hours of heavy laden sleep, and immediately realizing all that had happened on the previous day, I was positively amazed at my last night's sentimentality. What's that with Lisa? Sentimentality is excessive tenderness, sadness, or nostalgia. Being excessive tenderness. Oh, yeah, right? With Lisa, at all those outcries of horror and pity. To think of having such an attack of womanish hysteria. Ah, I concluded. And what did I trust my address upon her for? What if she comes here? Well, let her come, though. It doesn't matter. But obviously, that was not the chief and most important matter. I had to make haste at all costs to save my reputation in the eyes of Zherkov and Simonov as quickly as possible. That was the chief business. And I was taken up that morning that I actually forgot all about Lisa. First of all, I had to repay what I had borrowed the day before from Simonov. I resolved on a desperate measure to borrow 15 rubles straight off from Anton Antonovich, that's his boss. As luck would have it, he was in the best of humors that morning, and he gave it to me at once, on first asking. I was so delighted at this that I signed the IOU with a swaggering air. I told him casually that the night before, I had been keeping up with some friends at the Hotel de Paris, and we were having a farewell party for a comrade. In fact, I might say a friend of my childhood. And a desperate rake. Fearfully spoiled, of course. He belongs to a good family and a considerable means. A brilliant career. He's witty, charming, a regular Lovelace. You understand. We drank an extra half a dozen, and it went off all right. All of this was uttered very easily, unconstrainedly, commonplacently. And on reaching home, I promptly wrote to Simonov. Wow. You've been reading with Jimmy. Holy mackerel. Holy cow, huh? This is I think it's part 6 we're reading, right? Is that right? Part 6? Let me see this. Yep, part 6, isn't it? Yep, that was part 6. I got carried away. What do you think of what he did to this girl, this Lisa girl, huh? What do you think of this guy? Not only that, he's narrating what he did to whomever, to himself in the diary, and he's confessing, ladies and gentlemen. He's confessing to us. It's going to be a remarkable analysis. You've been reading with Jimmy. Learn more about Dostoevsky's Notes from Underground by watching part 7. 2 more parts, 7 and 8. And be sure to visit and read other classics on my website. This is Jimmy. Jimmy at readingwithjimmy.com is my email. I want to hear your comments and thoughts about this guy. What a guy. This is not an action sword fight, right? There's no pirates. But boy, this guy's amazingly. Is he evil? Is he screwed up? What's he doing? He's torturing this poor kid, huh? Wow. Anyway, we're going to remember the author's note. If you got to go back to the first one and read the author's note, but we're going to read that in part 8 when we finish this novel. Thanks for being here. Take care of yourself. Please, take care of yourself. Don't get like this guy. See you later.